Welcome to Tobar's Realm. I've had this inversion table for a couple years and never really liked using it. So it's just kind of been sitting. And I've been thinking what I can do with it. And I'm thinking I might be able to make a trebuchet out of this. Why? I don't know. But I think it's got all the basic shape and function of a trebuchet base that I can modify it to launch some stuff. It's not very big, but I think it'd be kind of fun. So I think I'm just going to start off by just taking it apart, like the padding part off of it. Just kind of see what I'm starting with. I'm not going to take it completely apart, but definitely the padding part, the foot hardware there, take that off, just kind of strip it down a little and see where I'm at. And I also have this therapy device that my daughter used to use. It's a stander, but she doesn't use it anymore. It's just kind of sitting here, but it's got a lot of good metal heavy duty pieces that I could probably strip off it and use to reinforce this. So yep, I think I'll just kind of start taking in some of this apart and see where I'm at. Alright, well, I got the upholstery piece removed. There's like a T-shaped piece that was underneath that. Got the foot brackets off. That's this piece here. I don't know, there might be some stuff I can scavenge off of that to use. And these parts aren't welded, so I think I'm gonna try welding those. It's pretty thin metal. I'm not a very good welder, but we'll see how it goes. And I'm thinking that this main silver bar there is long enough. If I mount the weight on the end here, it's 4 feet long. And I think the ratio you want is like 1 to 3.4. So that's pretty close. 1 foot on this side, 3 feet out the other side. I'm not sure how the difference in this hinging part here is going to affect the geometry of it or any of the physics of it, how it moves. But so I just detached a piece that was on this stander, and it's pretty thick. It's like 1/4 inch plate, and I tried doing some welding. I'm not even going to get close to it. I am not a good welder. Did not go well. Actually, it did go exactly as I anticipated, just bad. And I prepped these to weld, but I think that would be a mistake. I'll just end up making it worse and make more work for myself. But this piece I just got off of that other thing, I think if I used bolts, that'll reinforce this thing better than I could do with welds anyway. So I think it's time to start disassembling this thing. It's got a lot of promising parts, and one of them is this kind of H-shaped piece. So I'm just going to kind of start taking this thing apart and getting some options on other things I want to use it for. Well, I've just been kind of disassembling this stander and getting some really good pieces that I think I'll be able to use, and a lot of this is 1/4 inch, and so that's pretty heavy duty. This piece is, I like this one. I think I might be able to use this for the part that holds the counterweight on the back. I think that'll fit inside of that existing square tubing, and then that's pretty robust right there. So just kind of getting pieces and parts together to see what I can do with it. This is like 1/8 inch, but that's still pretty heavy duty. So just gonna keep taking this apart and see kind of what I get out of it. So I've been thinking a lot about this pivot point on here, and I'm just not happy with it being metal on metal like that. So I would like to put some bearings in there. So we had an old treadmill, and this was one of the drums, the roller that the fabric thing went on, and it had some bearings in there that I was able to get off of here. It also had some mounting hardware that fits those. So I think I'm going to end up just getting rid of this chrome piece altogether, drill a hole through this part, and put a bolt through there, and mount that hardware somehow on here. Essentially something like that. So I think next what I'm going to do is just make a pattern of where these bolt holes are and what kind of space I have with this stuff. Once I get that pattern done, I can figure out how I want to cut this, and maybe what holes I need to drill to get that sandwiched on there, have it bolted to it, and then a bolt go all the way through it, and then I'll just reinforce this stuff. That's where I'm at right now. So I'm gonna take these things off, make a pattern. So I got a pattern figured out. So I just need to transfer that pattern over to this piece and cut off that top and side there, and then drill those 2 holes where the bolts are, so it'll basically sit like that. And I'm hoping the angle's not too bad that I can actually drill a hole and put it through there, but maybe not. I might have to cut it off right there, I don't know. But first, transfer that pattern over to this and get it cut. Well, I got that piece cut and put on there. I had to get some longer bolts, and I'll probably have to turn them around because there's going to need to be room for that thing, the arm, to swing. But if I just pop this bearing pack in there, looks pretty good. Might have to bore that out a little, I'm not sure, we'll find out. So I'm going to start cutting the other side. That seems like it'll work. And then I just had to shim it with a couple of washers in there to make up for that pinched, where it's pinched down here. But I think that's close enough. I might have to add another washer, but maybe I'll drill another hole and put a bolt through this too. So get that pattern on the other piece and get it cut. I got both sides mounted with those pieces I modified. It turned out pretty good. I think I will end up putting a bolt through here. But now I need to widen this little U channel big enough so that it's the diameter of that inner bearing part there. So I'm gonna figure out how I can just widen this out a little bit. Maybe I can get a grinder blade down in there, maybe a Dremel, maybe like a curved file. But I'm gonna take this apart, or actually I'm gonna mark this first with a Sharpie to see where I need to cut out, and then take this apart and start working on that. Ultimately, my plan is to have a stack of washers between this bearing and the one I'm going to mount on the outside. So I need to have enough room to get those washers stacked in between there. So here's that old treadmill that I got those bearings off of. I came back to see if the other end had some hardware that might fit those bearings, but this end has like a tensioner setup. It doesn't have a round hole that it was sitting in like the top piece. But it's got these brackets here that have holes in them. I don't know if that's the same size or not. I think I'll pull them off, take them back, and check it out. That other drum was sitting across the top here. I'll pull it off of there and take it back and check. Well, unfortunately, these holes are slightly too small for the bearings. So I'll have to figure something else out, because the piece that I have here gets kind of crowded by that bolt. So maybe I'll have to just notch this out a little bit to fit in there. And I'd like to run it over to this other leg to just kind of add some additional strength to it. But I'll set this aside, and maybe some other hardware off of here will come in handy. Well, I just got this kind of lined up where I want it. I'm going to end up just notching that little piece so it doesn't block the hole. And then I ran it down here, and I'm just going to drill a hole right through the frame and put a bolt through there. And I think that'll work okay. So I got that mounted on there and notched out that piece. I think that worked alright. So I'm going to do the other side. Kind of my idea on these bearings is I got lock washers that are fitting there pretty good, pretty snug, and I'm hoping if I put enough in there and then sandwich them in, when that lock washer flattens out, it'll expand slightly inside of there and make a good sleeve in there. So I'm gonna get that other piece and make it to match and get that other hole drilled. Well, I got the second side done with that notch in there. I think I'm going to take this thing apart and get another hole drilled to attach this through here. So pull that apart, get a hole in it. So I got this reinforcing piece that was on that back of the stander's seat back. Just had to put some self-tapping screws there and then put 1/4-inch bolts all the way through it on these. And then I put a piece of all thread as the axle. I think that'll work better than bolts. But now I'm going to switch to working on the counterweight. I got this piece that I think I can just install directly into this tube there to extend the range or the length, and then just put some bolts through it, hang the counterweight on that. What I'm going to do is cut this off though, and then I think I'm gonna attach that here, drill a hole through this other side just to reinforce that part too. So first off, I'm just going to cut this off. So I got the end cut off of this thing and mounted there, and I'll put some nuts on each side of that just to secure it a little better. And then the remaining piece is going to go in the end of the short arm, but I'm going to need to cut off some of these tabs and this cross piece, so I think I'll cut it right next to that weld. Maybe go diagonal towards those two holes. Maybe straight up and down, but take this off first. And once I get that done, I think I'm going to drill a hole through that inner, put a bolt through there, and then I need to shim up this gap a little. Maybe these little ears that a cut off might be able to slide in there and bolt right in between to suck up that extra space, and figure out something for that one. I'm probably going to have to do something about this one. I was wanting to leave this pin mechanism because that just pulls in and out, but I was planning on having it adjustable, but I don't think that's going to be realistic. And this holds it right in the center, which I kind of want it butted right up against this edge of that larger tube. So I'm not sure yet, but I'm going to cut these now. Well, I got that piece trimmed up and in there where I want it. I measured this part, and it's just about 11 inches. And then this other end is approximately 40. So that comes out to just about the 3.75 that I was hoping for. So next, I think I'm gonna cut this off up here, and I'm going to add just a little bracket that holds this together, and then I'm also going to take this inner out of here, drill through it, put a bolt through, and shim it up with some washers on each side, I guess. Probably shim this somehow, but that's what I'm going to do next. I think the main arm is basically done. Got the bolts going all the way through to hold that inner one flush against the top. Ended up cutting off this that original adjusting peg that it had in there, put a bolt through it, and then got this rear pivot for the weight done. Got those little things attached to reinforce it. Got it bolted through that inner. So yeah, that's looking pretty good. I think now I'm going to move on to the actual weight itself. And what I'm planning on doing is I got this whole 2-inch square tubing that basically I'm gonna make like a U-shaped piece, and I'm gonna mount this old pin on there too, so I can just make donuts of weights to set them on that. And then I think I'm gonna mount this part basically on the end here, so I can put a bolt through it to put it on that arm. So first thing, I'm gonna go clean these up, because they've been just sitting out rusting for a few years. So take the wire wheel to it, clean it up. So I got the pieces built for the counterweight frame, and this is that pin. Ended up cutting off the end of it because it was just too big to fit in there, and then I ground it off a little bit so it'll fit with the curve of that the inside of that tubing, so it'll sit like that, and then this one will sit like this, kind of a J shape, I guess. Then these ears are ready to go. Just gonna weld them on there, and then that will be hung on that bracket for the arm of the trebuchet for the counterweight. So I'm gonna get it lined out and weld it. I think I'll just tack it together here pretty decent, and then I'm going to heat these up, these little ears, and try to bend them around and weld it so it's like wrapped around that. So there you go. Alright, got these welded together. I'm not a very good welder, but I'm happy with those. Got this attached pretty good, and then now I'm going to heat these tabs up and just hammer them around. Hopefully that'll work out the way I'm envisioning it. Well, that seemed to work, so I'll flip it over and do the other side. Well, that worked good enough. Just got them wrapped around there pretty snug. So I'm just going to go back and weld around that and get those ears on the top here. And then I'm considering reinforcing this 90 here, maybe put a little cross piece. Probably will. So I just started working on making the counterweights for that trebuchet, and right now I'm just starting to melt down some lead that I got. I use these for shooting targets, so I'm melting this down, and then I'll pour it in that small pot or pan, and I just put that chunk of square tubing in the center held down by the railroad iron there. So it'll have a hole in the middle so I can slide it on that counterweight frame. So just waiting for this to get hot enough to melt. Well, I cast the lead weight. That idea with the tubing in it worked pretty good. It didn't even leak underneath it, which I thought it would. I don't know if I'll be able to get that out of there or not. We'll see. This thing's all welded up. I am going to take it and cut this tip of this bottom piece off just to round it off. But other than that, it's ready, so I'm probably just going to throw it on there and see how it goes. Alright, well, I got the frame for the counterweight done. Had to modify it a little because I went up too high and it wouldn't fit on there, but I got that cut out, and it's a little frustrating, but whatever. So that's set, and then I have one weight made. I don't know how much this is. It's got to be 25, 30 pounds probably. I'll make more of those. I decided to just cut that piece of 2-inch tubing that was sticking up. I just cut it off. I didn't even try and get it out of there. Probably could if I spent enough time on it, but I'll probably make a couple more of these in the future. So that's basically ready to go. And I left that part with the little hole on top so I can I'll put this big washer on top of those and put a cotter pin in there just to keep them from being able to fall out. So I just wanted to move on to the end piece here. What I think I'm going to do is mount this. I'll mount it on the bottom side of it, but I'll just drill another hole in there so I can get 2 bolts through it. And I need to figure out, and then I'll cut off the head of this bolt so it'll be able to release that sling part. And then I think I'm going to mount like a U-bolt on the bottom of it to attach to the part of the sling that doesn't come off. So start working on that. So here's what I've decided to do with the tip of that. I'm going to mount, I'll just put another nut on the other side of this, cut that head off, and then in the future I can bend that if I need to adjust the angle of it. I can put a longer bolt if that's too short. I can cut it shorter if it's too long. And I just put an eye bolt on this side. I'll end up cutting that extra off. That'll be where the permanent sling is attached. Hopefully that'll work. I can always move it to this hole if I end up needing to, or I don't know. But so just moving on to the base here, I'm going to use 2x4s that I cut to 6 feet long. And right now I took the plastic foot off and just drilled through it so that I can put I think it's 3.5-inch lag. I'll put that plastic piece back on once I drill it out, and then I can put a lag screw straight through to these 2x4s. So I'm going to start with that before I start with the cross pieces. So I've started on the base. I got that frame attached to the bottom of it here. Got some cross pieces, and then this piece of plywood I'm going to run for that channel that will hold the sling side. And then I got this cross beam support kind of in place there. And I got some 1/4-inch bolts with wing nuts on them, so that can be just slid out from underneath there. I think that'll make it easier to move. It's too wide to, like, if I were to screw it together, it'd be trapped in my garage right now. But anyway, so I think I can put regular lag screws in one side, and on the other side I'll do wing nuts, so I can take that piece off, wing nuts there, and then that whole thing can just slide out So I guess I will work on that. I think I'm going to trim this off so it sits down in there, because there's just a little bit of a space, maybe half an inch there. So if I cut it here and sit down, I can attach this directly to it. Oh, nice, dead spider right there. I can attach this directly down in the front and the back. I'll get some pieces that'll go down and kind of make a trough for that sling to sit in. So, and I need to make one more of those. It's really windy out today, so I'm not going to mess with it. And then onto the trigger, and then I think I'm going to do some diagonal supports down with just some angle iron I got, some light gauge angle iron. But for now, I'm going to work on this wood part. Alright, I got the side supports mounted on there. Again, with the wing nuts so I can take them off. Just drilled through where this folding piece went. So now I'm working on the base here. I'm just going to screw down this little piece of plywood to the front and back, or front and back, whichever, but I'm not going to do it in the middle, so I can slide that beam out from underneath there. And then this is just a part of an old bed frame that I had, and I just cut it at a 45 like that, and I'm going to mount them one on each side here, which will create that channel for the sling to ride down. So I'm just going to take this over to the bench, get it centered and where I want it. I'll glue it and screw it from the back side so it'll be good. Well, I got that trough attached on there. I ended up not gluing it to it in case I needed to modify it in any way. But right now I'm working on the trigger mechanism. I've been thinking about how to do it. I'm kind of thinking if I mount a hinge like this with like a small metal plate on it, that when it's loaded, this will rest up against it when the load's on it, and then I can put 2 eye bolts, one on each side, with a pin where you pull the pin out and it'll let that hinge flap back, because this will push it over anyway, and it'll flip out of the way so it won't interfere with anything. Because I could put some kind of trigger stuff up here, but I'm afraid it'll interfere with the sling coming through. So I think I'll pursue this angle and see if it works for me. Well, I've gotten quite a ways along on this trigger mechanism, and then I was thinking of putting some eye bolts kind of like that and then pull the pin out. But when I kind of tested it out, that thing bounces around too much, so I don't like that, because if it comes back, it'll interfere with it. So then I was thinking, can I like spring load it so it stays down? Like maybe modify a mouse trap or something. But there's too much riding on one little piece that could fail. So I think what I'm going to pursue is putting some eye bolts essentially diagonal down. I'll get some that have screw threads on it, but kind of like down that way, kind of like that, and then put a pin like this and do it high enough that that'll catch on it, and then I can pull it out like that. I think that's better than this one. A good idea, but a bad idea. So I'm ready to start on the sling pouch. looked up some designs online, and this one's basically a diamond shape, and then you cut in and then kind of overlap them so it makes a little bit of a pouch right here. And then instead of going all the way to a diamond, I'm going to leave a little extra where I can fold it over, and I'll put some thicker leather just as a little part to reinforce that. Probably rivet it together, get a hole through it for the rope. So this is about 18 inches total, 8 inches wide. Then each end will overlap like that by approximately an inch, so it's about 16 inch total. These are a little over 2 inch in that I'm going to cut it. So get started doing that. I got the sling done. I reinforced it with that thicker leather, put some rivets there, and just kind of punched a hole through the whole thing. Got that rope just on that peg at the tip, and just kind of measured where I want it to be here. So I need to braid this back on itself, and then I got a shrink tubing thing on there I'll put over it. I already did that end, but once I get that on there, I'll get the one on that eyelet over there to this end. So I'm getting pretty close to done with this. I got all the weights there. That probably weighs maybe 120 pounds or so. And I'm just getting the wheels sorted out. These are the wheels from the stander I removed from those other part that it was attached to, but I'm thinking if I can mount this part there through that hole and put a bolt that sticks forward, it can rotate under, catch on that bolt, and then it'll be elevated off the ground a few inches, and then I can just kind of move it like a wheelbarrow. Maybe I'll put some handles on those back pieces. But first I need to cut off this extra here because it's kind of in the way. I think I'll cut that off kind of like that. Just screw it in with a big lag screw. Put a bolt sticking inward, and then it can pivot back underneath, catch on that bolt, and hold it up off the ground. So that's my plan on that. Alright, it's all done. Got the sling done. The only thing I'm a little concerned about is this rope here wearing through. I'll have to keep an eye on that, but got the wheel mechanisms completed. Those just fold back underneath it so you can move it around. Got the handles installed so I can kind of just lift it like a wheelbarrow. So now I need to take those parts apart with the wing nuts in them and narrow this up, get it out the garage door, set it up, and try it out. Loose. Ready? Yep. Loose. And pull it fast, not slow. Ready? Whenever you are.